what's going on? Ryan here with Intersection Records. 30 years ago, 1994. I'm going to talk about the concerts that I saw in 1994. I was 21 years old. I guess I would turn 22 in December of that year. And I was in college at University of Mississippi or Ole Miss. And seeing concerts one or two times a week, whether in clubs or bars or going and traveling to see big shows. And we'll talk about my favorite ones from 1994, kind of a peak year. Saw a lot of people, a lot of first times, and a lot of bands that I still love to this day. Starting off in January 1994, January 22nd, some buddies of mine drove down to first the coast of Mississippi, Biloxi, spent the night, I guess, or maybe we just spent a few hours at a buddy's house, and then drove over to Pensacola, Florida, and saw Rush. I had seen Rush in 92 for the first time, but seeing them on the Counterparts tour with Candlebox opening, I remember my buddy saying, man, Rush is washed up. We had bad seats up in the and the sound back then in concerts weren't quite as good. He's like, man, Rush is washed up. I'm like, you're crazy. And of course, they're not washed up in 1994. A couple days later, on the 31st of January, I saw a band called Zulu Spear at a bar in Oxford, Mississippi called Proud Larry's. And it was a revelation. There was just so much energy, kind of some reggae vibes and world beat vibes. Zulu Spear. February 10th, we went to Memphis. Same gang drove up. We were partying all the way up there. Went to an old theater called the Orpheum and saw Widespread Panic. The Connells opened up. And like several of the shows on the 94 list, I can't tell you anything particular about what happened, but we had a good time. Probably shouldn't have been driving, but we had a good time. On March 4th, George Porter Jr. playing at Proud Larry's again. George Porter Jr. is the bass player for the Meters, and he had his own band back then. I guess he probably still does. It was always just a sweaty, dancey night, where you leave the bar just soaking wet because you're dancing on every song, and it's just funky and groovy and amazing. Spring break then happens in March of 94. A couple of my buddies and I, we go camping up on the Appalachian Trail. We go to Washington, D.C. We drive into Ohio. We go to Notre Dame and visit a friend, and we end up in Chicago. We see the Grateful Dead for the first time on March 16th. They played Dark Star that night. They did a Scarlet Begonias in the Fire on the Mountain and Sugar Magnolia, and just an amazing show. We saw them the next night on St. Patrick's Day, and then saw them the following night on the 18th of March, and we had met some other friends from college that all drove up, Derek and Matt and Gunnar and my buddy Ben. We had a great time. Drove back home, back to school. When we got back, a couple days later, some guys said, hey, there's this band called Dave Matthews, and he's playing at this club called Lafayette's in Oxford, Mississippi. We need to go. We had the tape with the peace sign on it that you could see that had Under the Table and Dreaming. It was prior to the actual release of that album. We went and saw Dave Matthews, and I remember being close to the stage and just thinking to myself, man, this guy sounds like Sting. The songs are great, and 6 months later, they were huge. So that was on March 20th. On April Fool's Day, I drove back up to St. Louis, where I'm from, and saw Widespread Panic at a place called the Westport Playhouse. It's 20 seats in a round with a circle stage that rotates slowly in the middle. They played Blackout Blues, which had not been on a record yet, and April Fool's Day. It was awesome. They played Low Spark of High Heel Boys, which I think we requested they played. It was awesome. Smashing Pumpkins comes to our basketball arena there at Ole Miss on April 6th, just 5 days later after Widespread. It was amazing. We were very, very messed up that night, and ultimately somebody threw a bottle or something at Billy Corrigan, and he abruptly ended the show after teasing the crowd that all you want to hear is something like this, and broke into Smells Like Teen Spirit for a section. Everybody applauded. And what nobody knew is that up in Washington State, Kurt Cobain was already dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but the world didn't know that for a week. So later that month, we found out. Junior Kimbrough at Proud Larry's on 4/20 of 1994. Just a great old North Mississippi blues artist. Michael Hedges on the 21st, so the next day up in Memphis at the New Daisy. Michael Hedges was an incredible new age guitar player and singer, one of the great guitar players of all time, really. And he was sadly missed. He passed away in a car accident like in 98. Allman Brothers at Mississippi State, free concert with Blues Traveler opening up. One of the great nights of my life. We drove up there. We had been kind of playing hacky sack and smoking. And, hey, Allman Brothers are playing. And we drove in. I didn't wear shoes or a shirt. Drove my Jeep up down to Mississippi State, free amphitheater, kind of a natural amphitheater, and saw Dickie Betts and Warren Haynes just battling each other. John Popper came out from Blues Traveler and blew some harp on some songs. It was unbelievable. We drove back, and I think we got pulled over in one of those police lockdowns, and I didn't even have a driver's license on me or a shirt, shoes, empty beers in the back, and people passed out. He's like, just get out of here. Pretty lucky. A few days later, Pink Floyd in Birmingham, Alabama, Legion Field, where Alabama football would play Auburn every year. Back in the day, we saw the Division Bell tour. It was just magical. I mean, seeing Pink Floyd with all your buddies. And most of these concerts were the same group of gang. Derek and Gunnar and Matt and Patrick and all those guys. Kurt, I think, was on that show. Kurt. We stayed that night, I think, at a nursing college, and the nurses took care of us all night because we needed help big time. Black Crowes, 5 days later, outside on the Mississippi River in Memphis at Beale Street Music Festival. Black Crowes in 1994 were huge. I mean, they're just in their prime. It was amazing. Leon Russell played the next day. I'd never seen him before. So on this May 7th, saw Leon Russell for the first time. Entering into June, I stayed in school that summer. I went up to Memphis and saw Crosby, Stills, and Nash at Mud Island Amphitheater. Always great seeing those guys, one of my favorite bands of all time. Then went back to St. Louis that next month on July 6th and saw the Eagles, the famous Hell Freezes Over tour with the long run lineup with Don Felder on guitar. A little known artist named Sheryl Crow opened up. It was pretty cool. But the Eagles were just phenomenal. I think they opened up with Hotel California. Widespread Panic then at the end of July. I think it was a free concert again at the Jackson Zoo down in Jackson, Mississippi. Incredible show. Went back to St. Louis on August 1st, 1994 and saw the Steve Miller Band. I had seen him in 89. This one was notable. My buddy Dave got so drunk that when we dropped him off at his house, we literally just put him in his front yard of his parents' house and drove off. He was 6'4". He is 6'4", 6'5", hammered. There was no talking him. There was no taking him to his door. I think we got close to his front door and just left him for his parents to find, or his mom to find, I guess. Widespread. Elton John and Billy Joel, August 10th, 1994. I snuck in to Busch Stadium, where the Cardinals play, and saw Elton John and Billy Joel for the first time each. It was magical on a beautiful August evening there at Busch Stadium. Back to Mud Island in Memphis to see Jackson Browne for the first time, my idol. John Hyatt opened up. Just seeing all those songs. He had an album out that I can't think of the name right now. Damn it. With his face on it in the water. It was a good album too, but he was clearly singing his classics. That's what we were all there for. Quiet Riot. Picked up a little piece of Quiet Riot on actually the Rolling Stones, and Blind Melon played in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl. First time seeing the Stones. Voodoo Lounge tour. Blind Melon opened up. We were able to drive back to Oxford from Memphis. Liberty Bowls where Memphis State played football, and caught the last 2 or 3 songs of Quiet Riot. You still had Carlos Cavazo in the band. You had Kevin DeBrow. You had Frankie Banali. I think Chuck Wright was on bass. I don't think that Rudy Sarzo was there. I don't remember, but I was not all that sober either. Dave Matthews again on September 30th in the same little bar in Oxford. We then went back up to Memphis on October 12th and saw Phish. Driving up, partying, driving back, partying. That next day, Phish played our student union parking lot. You know, it was a conservative campus, but somehow student council got Phish to play, and it was just unbelievable. They did the long time by Boston in a bluegrass fashion. That bootleg, check out October 13th, 94 bootleg of Phish. It's incredible. Later that night, I was out on the highway in a convertible, Viper convertible, one of my buddies had, and we pulled up alongside of Phish's bus, and they were shooting lights at us, and I was looking out the back of the convertible like that, and all 4 members of Phish walked up into the front of the bus with a mirror ball up above them, and it was freaking amazing. I think that happened. Almost positive. I know it happened. Doesn't sound possible, but it did. We raced then. They were going to New Orleans, and we were getting beer. 5 days later, went down to New Orleans and saw Neil Young and Crazy Horse at the Farm Aid Festival at the Superdome where the Saints play football. Pete Fontaine played. Al Hurt played, famous trumpet player. The Neville Brothers played. Willie Nelson played. Chris Christopherson played. Paula Poundstone came out and did some comedy, and you could hear Neil Young warming up, and we booed Paula Poundstone off the stage. They dropped the curtain, and Neil Young and Crazy Horse. I screamed a song, Effing Up, and he played it, and there's a great bootleg of Down by the River. Willie Nelson came out and jammed it, and it was amazing. Went back up to St. Louis the day before Thanksgiving on Skanksgiving, saw Phish again at the Fox Theater. It was incredible again. Back to school for right before Christmas break, December 1st, 1994. Hey, we're gonna be careful when we go see these bands. We're gonna go to North Alabama University up in Florence, Alabama, at Flowers Hall and see Widespread Panic again. But we're gonna rent a we're gonna rent a van. So we rented a van, and one of my buddies drove it. We filled it with beer and weed and shrooms and everything else, and I don't know if it was any safer than driving a car, and I don't recall who drove, but we had a good time. Those are my concert memories from 1994. I do shows every day on this channel. Subscribe to my channel if you like this content. 30 years ago, what a year 1994 was from shows. Put some comments down below on shows that you saw in 1994. Peace out. See ya.